Welcome to the Same Side Selling Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Altman. A potential client calls you up, and the conversation goes something like this. As soon as you answer the phone, they say, hey, we're familiar with what you guys do. Remember, we talked a while back about some different things that you guys do, and we're ready to buy. In fact, we're ready to buy right now. All we need from you is a quote. We just need a quote from you, and then we'll turn the thing around in a couple days. We're really excited to get started. We just need to know what it's going to cost and how soon you guys can start. And we say, oh, that's great. Let me get back to you. Hang up the phone. We're high-fiving and celebrating with our team. Unfortunately, what happens a week, 2 weeks later? They go silent. We don't hear from them at all. All of a sudden, it's like, these guys were so excited. I got them exactly what they needed. And now I don't get any return phone calls. I don't get any responses to emails. I sent them this beautiful, amazing proposal with all the background in our business and our company and our products and our services, but somehow I'm not hearing back from them. So what happened? How did they go from being so excited to now they won't give us the time of day? Here's the trap that we fall into. The client calls up and says, it's a done deal. It's our fault. We believed them that it's a done deal. And so what happens is now we think it's a done deal. We send them a proposal. We get no response. And now we're left with follow-up. And the follow-up's like, hey, just calling to check in, see if you made a decision yet. Hey, we send this email. Hey, I'm just, want to make sure that everything was covered in the proposal. If you have any questions, let me know. And it just falls on deaf ears. The trap that we fell into is that we didn't ask the disciplined questions to fully understand their needs, their goals, the results they're looking for, who else needs to be involved. Instead, we just said, okay, fine, we're going to send you this information. Well, at that point, what do they need from you? The answer is nothing. And when someone says, hey, we're ready to buy, we just want to get your stuff, what's the likelihood that there's a true understanding between you and them about what exactly they need and what you need to deliver? I'll give you the answer. The answer is pretty much zero. So we now have communicated information to them. We gave them pricing that probably isn't accurate. We may have missed stuff that they actually need. If they did give us the business, we're probably not going to be able to deliver to their expectations because we haven't had a discussion about what their expectations are. So what do we need to do? When those things happen, we need to step back a little bit. Now, the mistake that some people make is they say, well, that's all good and well, but I need to ask you a few questions. And the client will likely respond, you don't need to ask me any questions. We know exactly what we need, because they believe that they already have everything they need to know. They already have all the knowledge. They already have all the information. But we know that they probably don't. So we need to give them a reason to share additional information with us that doesn't sound like some sales tactic, because it isn't. What we want to be able to say to them is, I'm really flattered that you're interested in this. I want to make sure that we're not missing anything because I want to give you accurate information. Would you mind if I ask you just a couple questions to make sure that we include the things you need, don't include the things that you don't need, and make sure that we fully understand what we're trying to deliver, so that we don't miss anything? Last thing I want is for you to spend money with us and not get the results that we need. Would you be okay if we asked you a few questions? Now, if you're on the receiving end, you start thinking to yourself, okay, well, sure, if they want to make sure they can deliver, that's okay. And then you might say, okay, so help me understand. By the way, what piqued your interest? What prompted you to call us right now to begin with? And now we're in what in the same side selling we refer to as the same side quadrants. It's these 4 quadrants. The upper left quadrant, we take notes about the issue, namely, what is it that inspired them to reach out? What is it they're trying to solve? In the upper right quadrant, we take notes about impact and importance, namely, what happens if you don't solve that? How important is this compared to other things on your plate? In the lower left quadrant, we take notes about results. Hey, just because you spend money with us doesn't mean that we're successful. What would we measure together to know that we delivered what you needed? And then they give you that information. Then you get to ask a question like this, which is, even if we do everything we said we would do, what might prevent you from getting those results? When you ask that question, they'll probably identify things that you can actually help them overcome that you would include in your proposal. And the lower right quadrant is where we take notes about others impacted or others involved. So we don't ask that horrible question of who's the decision maker, because it's immediately adversarial. Instead, we ask a question like, so who else would have a strong opinion about the impact? Who else is most directly impacted by this? Who else would have a strong opinion about how we measure success and what the results look like? If we get that information, now when we send them a proposal, we get to say to them, here's my understanding of what you're trying to solve. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. Here's what happens if you don't solve it. Here's the importance of that compared to other things. Here's what success looks like. And here's who else needs to be included. And these are our next steps that we've agreed to together. Now, as part of that, they may have said to you, well, the way we're going to measure success is if this gets delivered by this date. So now let's say a week goes by and you haven't heard from them. You don't call up and say, hey, just checking to see if you made a decision. Now you get to call up and say, or once again, this could be a call or an email, and you get to say, I'm looking through my notes. You mentioned that you had to solve this problem. Here's what happened if you didn't solve it. Here's why it was so important. And you needed to have this implemented by this date. I haven't heard back from you. I want to make sure we hadn't dropped the ball because it sounded really important, which is a way better approach for follow-up than, hey, just calling to see if you made a decision yet. See, if I'm calling to see if they made a decision, what I'm really asking is, hey, have you decided to buy our stuff yet? If I take the time to go through the quadrants, then what I'm finding out is, here's what you said was important to you, and I'm following up for your reasons as the client, not my reasons as the seller. And when you make that pivot, you can truly stand out. More importantly, if you're asking those questions and your competitors aren't, your client might say, well, how come other people aren't asking these same questions? And that gives you to stand head and shoulders above the rest. So remember, when someone calls with that lay down deal, it's a slam dunk. We just need a quote. To coin a phrase from Star Wars, it's a trap. Avoid that at all costs. Take the discipline to find out more about what it is they're trying to solve to make sure they're going to get the results. That will give you an opening to navigate through the quadrants to make sure you fully understand what they're doing and you can best serve their needs. And when you do that, your follow-up can be based on their needs, not what it is you're trying to sell, which, by the way, will help you in whatever it is you're trying to sell. If there are topics you'd like me to cover, just drop me a note to ian@ianaltman.com. Be sure to check out the Same Side Selling Academy at samesideselling.com. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube or on a podcast, please like, share, subscribe, all those good things to help other people find the same information. See you next week on the Same Side Selling Podcast.